Well, hello friends, and welcome back to browser hacking once again. Experimenting a little bit with sound and video here today, so I hope it turns out okay. Now, today we're going to continue working a little bit on that Apache 2 default website. So I'm going to open up my local host machine here, and if you watched that video where we worked on that last time, this is as far as we got. Now, the page looks kind of good enough and everything, but when you resize it, then it keeps growing, and that's not how it behaves over here in Firefox. It has a static width. So I figured today we're going to investigate why that's happening and try to fix it, because this isn't right. So let's try to work it out using the tools that we have so far. So I guess we can, the easiest thing I guess is just look at the source. Or actually, no, I feel like we actually looked at this last time and we looked at the layout tree, but I don't remember what the issue was. So let's just look here at the layout tree. So we have an HTML block, and then we have a body block, and then what is this? This is a div. Has 100% width. We definitely don't know what to do with that type of value, but I feel like something else is going wrong here. So let's just peek at what Firefox has concluded. So main page, this div is 800 pixels wide, right? Because it says width 800 pixels. So that would be the outermost div, the first div in the body. So here's the body, here's our first div block child, and we don't see the width CSS property applied here. So it seems that we don't even have, like, we haven't applied that selector or whatever. We haven't applied the right style. So that should be pretty fixable. Can this tell us where that comes from? I'm not super familiar with the Firefox developer tools. Inherited from body. Like, what if I wanted to know where this property came from? Can I just, I don't know. Oh, wait. Oh, hold on. Shit, it's right here. It's right here. Okay. Div.mainPage. It's here. Okay, so I'm going to say that this selector probably does not work because it's, what's this called? Like adjoining selectors, right? Adjoining classes, is that it? Disallow adjoining classes. Was this some linter? Okay, so basically CSS allows you, I don't know why these people say that you shouldn't do that, but in CSS you can definitely do stuff like .foo.bar, and that means that if there's no space between the .foo and the .bar, that means that we gotta match both of those classes on the element. And here, this is, it's not two classes, but rather it's a div with a specific class. So that means that currently our selector that we have, selector representation, it does not allow for this type of thing. We can either have a element type or a class name or an ID, but no combinations of these things. So we're gonna have to fix that. Otherwise, we're not gonna be able to match the selector. So I think the easiest way. So right now, the way that we store a selector in memory is that we have this selector object, And a selector is a vector of components. And basically, this was one of the first videos I made about the browser hacking, was about how this works. So that's the descendant selectors video. But basically, the components here are from right to left in the selector. So let's take one here that has multiple things. I don't know, they all have like two. Okay, so in this selector, for instance, the components are first here is a tag name component, and then comes a combined tag name and class name component. But this one is the first one in the vector. So we are going to want a component. This is still going to be one component, but we want components to be able to have multiple subcomponents or whatever, so that you can specify more than one thing. Because really, you want to be able to do stuff like, like div.foo with id bar, and attribute type is la la la. Colon hover, right? Like, this is a valid selector. It's a very, very specific selector, but it's a valid selector nonetheless, I think, as far as I understand. So we are going to have to make it possible to have components within components. And maybe the best way to do this is to just have component be more of a... Instead of having like components here, we could have like lists of components, or like that component itself is sort of a node in a linked list. Would that work? What do we call this? Component. Like, I like the name component, but maybe it should be, we should have like a component list here. Let's try it out. So what if we had struct component, struct component list, or could this just be a vector of component? Maybe that would be good enough. Then this would look this way, and components would instead be component lists. Is component still a good name? I don't even know what the name of these things are officially. Maybe I should look at the specs. But right now we're calling these components and component lists. So this here now is going to be one component list. This will be the first component, and this will be the second component. But they all have to match. So let's try this out. So let's see, component. We want a vector of component lists when we create. Okay, and then specificity is going to be calculated by going through all the component lists. And for auto component in list. Okay, I think that's pretty okay. And then component lists does not name a right component lists. All right, now we are going to need to do this in the selector engine. So when we want to match an entire selector, we have to do component list at a time. So I think we can do this like bool matches cost selector component list. So what do we do here? Yeah, right. So this is component list index. Oh geez. I feel like this name component list is kind of awkward. Component list index. Component list. And then for auto component in component list. Maybe it really is that simple. Okay. Basically, we just take what we were already doing, except now we walk the whole component list and make sure that everything matches in each component list. Okay, so then let's look at the parser. So where do we parse selector? I guess we can just look for the red, actually. A to I. Wait, that's weird. What's A to I part of? It's to the lib. Right. It's to the lib. I feel like I should have known that. It makes that red go away, but here we have some red still. So when we parse a selector, we now have to produce a current rule selectors. So here, when we construct a selector, we want to produce a component lists somehow instead, which is right here. So we'll do that, and component lists, parse selector component. So I think here we can just rename this to parse selector component list. Then we just have to update these names because it didn't happen automatically. And relation. Wait, hold on. Component list value. No known conversion from selector component to. Yeah, okay, we'll get to that. This one is going to return a component list. We'll get to that, but here, what is this relation none business? This is just that the leftmost component in the selector does not have a any kind of a combinator relationship to the thing on its left because there's nothing on its left. So I guess maybe this is not, it's not as simple as having a vector of component here, because this part here, the relation, that's when it comes to all of these things here, let's look at one. So this selector right here, for instance, a div with class name, table of contents, item, and a descendant of this with tag name A. The relationship between this tag name here and this component list is a descendant. So this has to be a descendant of this. And right now, this relation is stored on the component, but really it's something that belongs on the component list. So we're going to have to change component list into a proper struct, I think. And move the relation down there. But otherwise, that's okay. Yeah, that's good. And then component list has to have a vector of component. Vector of component, components. Okay. And then the relation becomes a list thing, and now this code is good. Now we got red up here instead. So first, this stuff becomes kind of easy. We just need to tweak it a little bit. Blip, blip, blip. And then let's see, here we are using this syntax to create a component, but really this thing is supposed to return a component list. So, maybe we should split this up into an optional selector component, parse selector component, and then we'll just, I guess we'll just start by taking everything here and putting it up here. There's probably some easier way I could have done that. But the relation stuff, it's going to go further down. So this stuff right here can go in the parse component list. And this is a good use of auto, I would say. So when we parse a component list, first thing is we're going to figure out, is there a combinator? And by default, we assume that the combinator is descendant, and then we reset it to be none for the leftmost component list. But the caller takes care of that. That's a little bit obfuscated, actually. I don't love that. But, yeah. Okay, so if we encounter this, this means that a declaration starts here. So we need to stop parsing. We need to stop looking for a selector component list. And then here we identify the type of combinator in use. And then we're gonna have to start looking for components, I guess. Yeah. So let's see, how do we do this? For parse, or we should make a vector component. Okay, so auto component is parse component. If component has value, components append component value. I guess if it doesn't have value, then it's time to break out of the loop. Okay. And then we will return a component list that has the relation and the components. We can move those. And, oh, we have to return optional. Selector component list. There we go. That's pretty good. Okay, so this is definitely not enough though. So here, this is the universal selector component. We need to return a component, so now we're just going to ignore the relation part. And how do we know where each component ends? Because previously we were looking for, let's see, so for attribute selectors, we just look for the, this guy, like the matching bracket. And for class and ID, they start with a dot or a pound sign. But where do they end? Let's see. This is pseudo classes. Why can't I find it? Why am I so blind? Oh, here it is. Right. So if it's anything except the universal selector type, component type, then as long as is valid selector character, we'll just keep consuming parse input and adding it to the buffer. And then that buffer is what we put in the thingy. So is valid selector char. I'm going to say that dot and pound sign probably need to not be in here. Wait, hold on. Is valid selector char. Oh, they're not in here already. So I thought this list was exclusive, but it's inclusive. So maybe this would already just kind of work. I mean, that's very optimistic, but we can try. Oh, it doesn't even compile. Okay, let's go look at selector CPP. Forgot about something here. Component list does not have a thingy anymore because now we have to get the components like that. And then the selector engine is not, also has a bunch of red because we have to go here and get the components. And then these relations are different because I guess the relation only has to be evaluated once, actually. We don't need to do it for every component. So first thing we'll do is check that all the components in the component list match. Then if that's good, then we will look at the component list relation to the thing on its left. And if that clears, we will return true. So basically, what happens here is that we just recurse. So we recurse into another call to matches. For instance, in the descendant case, we will walk the list of element parents of this element and check if any one of them matches the thing on our left, and so on. And then it will recurse all the way up through the selector. And down here we also forgot something. No member named components in selector. Seems like we're going to compile, so can we get one of those nice commands that rebuilds? Oh, we need to fix the dump code so it knows how to dump out the selector. This actually needs to be a little bit smarter. So we need to loop here, and this can be named to component list. Component list. Components. And then, this is a bit weird. Because the list is now, the list and its relation needs to go outside. So, no, not there, here. And then we don't want to, I mean, I guess we can print it that way for now. That's okay. Function definition is not allowed here. Well, it seems like I forgot to put a curly brace somewhere, didn't I? And that would probably be wherever I added the second level of iteration. So here, I need some matching there. Alright. Wow, that did not go well. seems like we are allocating all of the available memory and killing the kernel. Not exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that the CSS parser does something dumb and just gets stuck in the loop allocating. Probably in parse component list. Selector component list. So let's see. Parse selector component. We never fail here. So how do we know that it's time to fail? I guess when we return one of those guys. So maybe that did belong in the component parsing as well. This thing definitely needs to be better at not falling apart in bad situations. Okay, so I guess I would like to find out why we're failing, so let's just give it a little bit more memory. Maybe we can get a better stack trace. 5 to 12 megs. That's going to solve all of our problems. Or it will just take a little longer and then crash anyway. But actually, maybe we can stop it and see what it's doing. So where are you, system monitor? So browser, stacks. Look at that. Isn't this handy? Earlier today, by the way, I made these C++ names be demangled now, so now they don't look like these mangled symbols. The stack just looks amazing. So it's the first time I see one in System Monitor. Awesome. So we are definitely in parse selector component list, just looping. And look at all of that physical memory we've allocated already. That's not very good. So we are being silly, and we need to stop. Now, why exactly are we being so silly? Parse selector component. Isn't this what we would encounter? If we encounter this. Let's see, parse selector component list. We can also, at this point, we can like, let's do something here where we assert that we haven't gone too far. So we'll do like, I don't know, like a parse assert that components dot size is less than 10, because we should never get more than 10. And then that will dump out the CSS. Parse assert will dump out the whole CSS and tell us where we are in it. Okay, so we are at character 35 in this piece of CSS right here. So I can just put that in a file and go to 35, and we are here at the D. And we have 10. Wait, hold on. Yeah, we have more than 10 components in this selector. So I guess we thought that all of these things were probably components. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know how the heck it got to 10 here. But it should clearly have stopped already here. So parse component. Let's just look at what actually would happen when we go into this function. Parse component list. I feel like I'm getting a little lost here, so let's just run through it mentally. So we enter here. We definitely don't have this, and we have no common error to speak of. So we just go with the default relation, which is descendant. And then we will go straight to parse selector component. Okay, so we're looking for we have an H. Parse selector component, assume white space. I'm not going to do anything. Let's put this on top. And we can also do this just to make it a little tidier. Okay, so we are here, right, in the H. And then we peek. It's not a star, and it's not a dot, and it's not a pound sign, but it is an alpha character. So we're going to say this is a tag name component. And then, since it's not universal, as long as it's a valid selector character that we can peek, then we will append it to the buffer. So we're going to keep going until we hit this, ideally, is valid selector character. So if it's an alphanumeric character or one of these guys. So we should fail here. And then we should add that as create a component out of that, sorry. Out of this. And then we look for attribute selector optionally and a pseudo class optionally, but we're not going to find them, and then we'll return the component. And then what? Then we're expecting to find this guy, but we don't, because why? Why not? So, who calls you? I feel like maybe I should have two editors open here. And we'll go there. Okay, so this is the caller. So let's do a little bit of printf debugging here. Parse calling, parse selector component at index. Oh, what the heck's it called? Index. Okay, that's just the index into the source that the parser is working with right now. And peek would return. Peek just tells us what's the next upcoming character. So this should tell us what exactly we are peeking at when we get there. So the very first call here, we are peeking at a B. Say what? That's a little bit weird. So it should be, oh wait, what the heck is this that we're even looking at? Parse selecting. Maybe this is it this? Or is it, I don't know which thing gets parsed first, so now I'm a little bit confused. Maybe it's this, actually. So probably this, maybe this parse is okay. It's a little bit confused, but here's where we run into trouble. And index 35, comma. So we get to the comma, then we don't know what to do. Parse selector. Oh, right. So parse selector list, parse selector. We need to know that it's okay to have a comma. It just means that we're starting on a new selector. but instead we are in parse selector component with a comma. So I guess we'll say if peak is either that or peak is comma, and we'll even do the same up in the selector component. Just because now I'm a little bit paranoid about that. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Looks like we have some functioning CSS. Let's take a look at the style sheets. We get them dumped out. Here they are. That's very bare, but I guess these are indeed the styles that we have in this document. Very, very simple. If we look at the source, we can see it. It's just a body style and H1 style. Okay, and it's not more than that. That's what you get. So let's go to that web page now. Okay, so hey, look at that. It stops growing. Shit, did that just work? That's pretty nice. Okay, let's look at the style sheets, see what they come out as. So now, selector, div, tag name div, class main page. Oh, dude, that's so cool. So now it just shows up like this instead. Here you have selector, tag name div, class name page header, tag name img, but there's supposed to be a relation here, I think. But we're not dumping that out correctly. So what did we do with the relation description? Do type description, component value, and relation description. But the relation description is only done once. But it seems like relation is always none, maybe, so that's not good. So I think we're probably parsing this one incorrectly. Let's see what it looks like in the source code. It says div dot page header with an img. I bet that's going to be a descendant. Yeah, it's right here. Oh, this guy right here. So we have the first part, it's good, but then we don't notice that there is a descendant relationship. So how do we make sure that that turns out correct? And maybe we should visualize this a little bit differently. I was thinking where we do components, we could not do a line break and do the line break after each entry in the component list. So each component in a component list would end up on the same line. Let me just see what that looks like in the dump output, because I think that would make it a bit more, or a lot more easy to understand what it is that you're looking at. Dump the style sheets, and you know, it's not the most beautiful, but you get the idea here, right? So this is definitely a bug that they end up in one long component list rather than in two separate component lists. I mean, two separate component lists, yeah. All of these components are in one list. That's a bug. So because we encounter a space character after one of these, then we need to say, okay, this is the end of this component list. Right. So parse selector component list. Wait, so how is this going to work? That this guy needs to stop adding more components to the list. Parse selector component. This needs to fail when we encounter a space character. So we can't just consume the white space. Parse, consume white space or comments. Right. We can't do that. We can't consume white space or comments here. Unless, I mean, if this does something, so maybe we could have this return if something is consumed. We'll just cheese it, I think. And return original index is not index. Now this will return true if something was consumed. Parse selector component. So if it encounters any white space, we will return a failure. And then whoever calls this has to make sure that we clear out the white space before we go into this loop. Consume white space or comments. Okay. Now we should fail when we get some white space. And can we get the style sheets? And look at that. This is beautiful, isn't it? So we need a tag named div with class content section text, and it needs to have a descendant with tag name p. Then we apply the style. That's so neat. And it's just so much fun working on this stuff. I don't know if it's fun to watch, but like this is a really interesting project for me because I worked on a browser for so long at Apple, but it was already mature, right? So it was always like optimizing mature things and coming up with like refactoring and optimizing things that already existed, or fixing bugs, or implementing features that were like built on top of other things, and it was a whole other thing. Like here we are in the trenches implementing all the little things, and it's just fantastically fun. And I have to admit that it is very helpful for me to shake this feeling that I always had back in the day that that a browser is very complicated, and like I don't know how everything works, and like I don't think I would ever learn how everything works, because now I'm doing that. And you are here with me, which is really sweet, because now we can both learn. So let's see. I mean, now I'm just happy that this worked out. So let's look at the layout tree, how it turned out. Because we should see that that first div child of the body block should have a width of some 100 px, right? Here's the body, here's the div, has a width 800. It's a pixel length. Very cool. Awesome. I guess probably we made a whole bunch of other selectors also work now, but I'm a little bit blinded, so I can't really tell what looks different. But yeah, so that's awesome. Let's just turn this into some commits. So let's see what we have. Is any of this remotely independent? No, it does not. Do I love these names? Component list. It does feel kind of crappy, honestly. I feel like maybe we should call these something else. Let's see what the CSS spec says. CSS selectors, who writes these things these days? I can't even keep up. Selectors level 4. That looks recent. I'm always using Firefox in my videos because it's like my video browser, but I have to say that it is quite annoyingly slow. So what is it that we're looking for? Structure and terminology. So simple selector is a single condition. Compound selector is a sequence of simple selectors not separated by a combinator. Represents a set of simultaneous conditions on a single element. So it is a compound selector, the thing that we're doing. And if it contains a type selector or universal, then they have to come first in the sequence. Okay, well, there are some constraints here that we're not upholding. But I think we're just going to let it slide for now, because, you know, you can't do everything right from the beginning. Look at this, grammar. Maybe one day we would parse CSS using a grammar instead of doing it by hand. But it's just so cozy to parse by hand, don't you think? It's fun too, because it forces you to think about how everything fits. But maybe that's just a silly reason, and the truth is that I just enjoy parsing by hand. So this is a compound selector, but does, oh yeah, so here's the thing that I was figuring out. As white space represents the descendant combinator, no white space is allowed between the simple selectors in a compound selector. Oh, so they are simple selectors in a compound selector. Maybe we could say that we always have a compound selector, and this is the compound selector. Compound selector. And then this is a, we rename component to simple selector. It's kind of neat. So now a selector, term selector can refer to a simple selector, compound selector, complex selector, or selector list. Well, we're not gonna model this object model that they have here perfectly right now, because now a selector is a list of compound selectors. What is a complex selector? Because I guess we're modeling selector as a selector list, really, and then in most cases you have only one compound selector entry, which has one simple selector entry. Does that make sense? I feel like that makes sense. Complex selector is a sequence of one or more compound selectors separated by combinators. Oh crap, we actually have that. So this is a compound selector. This is a complex selector, because a complex selector is just this plus relation. So let's update ourselves. Complex selector. Separated by combinators, and they call them relationships described by the combinators. So I like that. We're really close. Relationship. But we'll leave relation, I think. But complex selector is a better name here. And compound. So really, like, if you want it to be that way about it, we could say like using compound selector is vector of simple selector. And then instead of calling this components, we would call this the compound selector. And instead of calling this component list, call it M complex selectors. And simple selector is still good. And I can hear my cat yelling outside the door here, but not right now, sweetheart. Relation, that's pretty good. I feel like there are, yeah, right, so we have some of these things to update. Complex selectors. And in one of these guys, we now find the compound selector. So compound selector has simple selectors inside of it. This is going to be really quite nice. I'm a bit disappointed that the QCreator thingy seems to have missed some of the search and replace I was trying to do there, or automatic, because it has this like refactoring function where it allows you to change a symbol name globally, but then I've noticed that it doesn't always play well with auto. So like whenever you try to like change the name of a symbol globally and there's auto somewhere in the mix, then I noticed that some of these things don't get updated. And I'm not exactly sure why, and I never tried to pin it down, but you know, you can go and work this out. So this is instead going to be complex selectors, and we'll rename this to complex selector as a relation. And then instead of component list here, we'll say complex selector. And it has a list of compound selectors, right? I'm still figuring this out myself here. Compound selector dot type. Oh, so when we iterate over the compound selector, we shouldn't call it compound selector. We should say that we're iterating over simple selector. I mean, this is our iterator. Oh man, this is starting to read so nicely. And it still works. Isn't it adorable? Let's see if it's 800. It looks like you're about 800. Yeah. Okay. 800 pixels. I'm so pleased with this. Let's dump the style sheet and see what it looks like here. So now, why does it end up like this, by the way? Oh, there's a lot of space here. Oh, that's interesting. I guess that's why it ends up like this, which it looks kind of neat, but also weird. We could also just have like, I don't know, like a plus or a comma or something. A comma might make a bit more sense. Although then we can't use this style of looping if we do that. Let's just use space. That's fine. Or no, we're gonna use comma because it's gonna look beautiful, and these things matter. Details matter. Alright, less than complex selector, compound selector size, and then we'll have to reconstruct this from, oopsie, at I, or like that. And now we have I, which is not already taken, right? So I down here, we can say that if I not equal to, what the hell were we iterating over? Complex selector, compound selector, size -1. Then we will debug printf a comma. Okay, and it's going to make all the difference. It's going to be so beautiful now, like you're not going to believe it. And let's dump those style sheets and dang it, I got a space after. Ugh. Wait, why do I get a space after the tag name? Type, description, relation. Oh, there's no relation here. Ooh. Right. So this thing was indented 4 spaces because it was supposed to line up with this guy. So let's fix that. We'll dump this out first. So debug printf 1, 2, 3, 4. That will fix the indentation. And we can actually do the relation before we do any of this. So we'll just dump out the relation description up top. Debug printf. Let's see if relation description. If it's not an empty string, then something like this. I feel like I'm typing this URL so many times now. Oh, look how cute it is. Although we doubled up on the curlies. Didn't need to do that. Oh, I guess we already have the curlies here. So we'll just put the curlies down there instead. It's all good. But generally, this is really awesome. So this one has no relation, this one has descendant, and so on, and everything is just working just right. So I think we're going to be happy with this. I'm saying HTML, implement complex selectors, complex and compound selectors. Or really what we're implementing right now is compound selectors. This patch moves the selector object model closer to the selectors. What's it called? For to this specification objects and selectors level 4. A selector in libhtml is now a list of complex selectors, which I guess we can say a vector of complex selectors, which is a vector of a relation plus relation vector of, let's see, how do we do this? This is a really weird way of typing this, because this is what I meant to say, which is a relation and a vector of compound selector. Compound selector is really a vector of simple selector. And simple selector is the new name for new. This component we named. Did I actually get that right? We have to double check. Vector of complex selector. Yes, which is a relation. Relation and vector of compound selector, right? Yeah. Wait. No, it's not a relation and a vector of compound selector. It's a relation and a compound selector. It is really just a vector of simple selector and simple selector is component reading. Yeah. This makes a lot more selectors actually match on the Ubuntu Apache 2 default homepage. Oops, knocking over some Christmas beverage bottles here. Some julmust. If you're Swedish, then you know what that's about. Gotta have one of those. All right. I am really quite happy with that. And I guess it's dragged out a little bit on time, but it's still such a huge architectural improvement, I would say. So we definitely have other stuff to fix. This page is so bright. And this isn't even what I wanted to look at. I wanted to look at this. So the dotted border, for instance, we don't have that. It's a bit sad that we don't have the dotted border. So let's just make a dotted border. That would be in layout box, where we draw the box. So here is layout box paint border, which I'll show you how that gets called. So it gets called for each edge, so for each side or edge, whatever you want to call it. So one's for the left side, right side, top side, bottom side. Top side and bottom side sounds weird. Top edge, bottom edge sounds better. I guess that's why I ended up calling it edge. Anyway, we call it paint border, and here we eventually figure out the border style. So if it is inset, then we do one thing. If it's outset, we do one thing. Otherwise, we just assume that it's solid. But I think we are going to change. We're going to have to do something differently here. I mean, this assumption is not right. So we can get rid of that code, because it wasn't doing anything. But here's the code to actually draw a line. And I think when we are dotted, then I guess the easiest thing to do is dotted. Let's just say is dotted, and we'll check for this especially. We'll just hard code it a little bit. I want it to say hard coded, not type it. To string is dotted. Okay, and then in draw line, which we call a bunch of places down here, we will just check if it should be dotted. Then we'll do one thing. Otherwise, we'll do the other thing. The other thing being just calling draw line. So here, the draw line code. So one thing that we know here is that we are definitely drawing either a horizontal or vertical line, but I'm thinking maybe draw line could have a parameter for dotted, actually. We'll just say dotted. And then we can just pass it along. Draw line. Ooh, dotted, false. It's not perfect, but it's going to be okay. then we can just pass it along instead. That's a little bit easier. Dotted. Okay. And then in draw line, here's where we draw each individual pixel in the line, in a vertical line. So what we can do here is we can just say if, or I mean, I guess we can have two separate loops, I was thinking. So if dotted, then we'll do one version of the loop. Thinking something like that. And likewise down here, so and then when it comes to diagonal lines, let's just say like assert not dotted, because I don't want to implement that at this very moment. So we're just gonna fix me dotted diagonal lines. And we'll need to make libdraw, libhtml clean, and okay, there we go. Wonder if we can get dotted. Wouldn't that be nice? I guess I have to rebuild libgui as well. That's what I get for changing the painter code. Rebuilds. Okay. That's not so bad. Getting pretty good at typing this URL. No dotted action. Why though? I guess we can dump out the layout tree to see if we even think that it should be dotted. So where is this piece of stuff anyway? Do we have dotted anywhere in the... It's right here, border style dotted. Let's look at, or this looks weird, by the way. Is that actually what it looked like? Because I just realized that this tree ends here. Now I'm unsure of what it looked like over here. Oh, I guess it does end there. Okay, so that's out of our control. But I really want to know if this is... What is it? It's a pre with border style dotted. So we could look for a pre, because I think that's going to be easy to find. So pre, layout block. Yeah, we definitely have all of these. This is the stuff that we're looking for. And we have border style dotted, but it's border style dotted. Ooh. So that's a shorthand. So we probably don't expand that shorthand. So we're gonna have to go and hack that a little bit. Which one is that? Shorthand expansion is extremely hackish right now. So the way it works is that you have to go here and say, you have to hard code everything. So I have to do this one manually, border style. It's going to be expanding into all the 4 separate border style sub-properties. So we'll just do it manually. Border top style, value. Top, right, bottom, and left, and return. Now this thing should be applying. Oh, and we need to do the others as well, border width. Because we only do margin and padding already. And this one uses border width, border style, and border color. So let's do all of them since we're here. But this code should be eminently generatable if we can just come up with the right way to write like a JSON file or something that describes this transformation in some clever way. So this is just going to be width, 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 and width, and this is going to be, what was it, color. No, that's not what I want. That's what I want. Okay, so hopefully now all of these properties will expand into their proper longhand variants, and we will see some frickin' dotted border. Look at that. Ooh. So nice. Dude, I'm so glad that I didn't just stop after the selector stuff. So now this is a huge improvement, and definitely we are getting closer and closer to the intended rendering, I would say. So awesome. Let's see. So here we can actually do a few separate patches. So style resolver, we can do libhtml, add shorthand expansion for border style. We can say border style with color. This is going to be quite boring to do by hand for every single CSS property, so we'll probably want to come up with a way to auto-generate all of most of the shorthand expansion code. And then we had the painter, just adding the way to do dotted lines. Lib draw. Add a dotted parameter, or no, support dotted lines in painter draw line. Painter draw line now has an optional dotted argument parameter that allows you to render every other, that causes it to only render every other pixel. Note that this only works with horizontal, vertical lines at the moment, and will assert if called, and will assert if called with dotted true for a diagonal line. Cool. And then finally, libhtml. Respect border style dotted. Dotted borders are now painted correctly as long as they are 1px wide, which is yet another little improvement to my Apache 2 default page. Awesome. Okay, so I think this is going to be it for today's video, but I'm really happy with the progress that we have made. So let's just look at it here one more time. Very, very cool. So I hope you saw something interesting today, and thank you for watching, for hanging out, and for continuing to take an interest in my various programming projects. It's going pretty okay, I think. So we're just going to keep going and see where the wind takes us. Thanks everyone for hanging out, and I'll see you next time. Bye.